Hello, today is January 30th, 2020, and I would like to do one last video on the 7-year nightmare I lived through, making this version up to date to its conclusion. There is so much complexity with what I've been through, it is difficult to remember every detail, so I'll go over the highlights, also to keep the time of this video to a minimum. Everything is supported with independent evidence, which I share examples of in my other videos. Here is my story. April 2012, I moved across country to start a new life. The first job I was able to get was cleaning public toilets until I got a position in my new career. November 2012, I resigned from a mental health organization I was employed with. Last day to be December 31st, 2012. This was based on relations between the new executive director and me. I learned of real sexual abuse by influential men in the city. December 2012, a female attendee falsely accused me and a male co-worker of some sort of sexual assault. I do not know anything more. Police records will show she has an extensive history of doing this. No one wanted to speak to me. I tried to address my concern. I never saw this coming. I made the first audio recording of her in December of 2012. The irony of the accusation is I haven't been with a woman or in a relationship since the woman I married went missing overseas in 1999. A sex trade agency shipped her to some small country in northern Africa. This is all I know. In 2011, I learned she was okay, and this is all I know. I have newspaper articles about this. I lived with the hurt ever since, not being able to protect, help her, making the females and the 2 former officers' accusations even more hurtful. January 2013 to May 2013, I had the opportunity to meet with the female always in public, record conversations to vindicate myself. I got what I needed, but before I could figure out what to do, May 4th, 2013, 2 police officers at the time, Mr. K and Mr. H, decided to do street justice on behalf of her. They were clear about this. Mr. K sucker punched me through the driver's window, knocking me out. Mr. H put a gun to my head. Mr. K handcuffed me and they beat me. Mr. H testified it was a taser, and police logs show no taser was signed out. Mr. H, being a Christian, denied finding intestinal gas pills on me and lied about many other things, after swearing on the Bible. Most of the beating took place after they found the pills in my pocket. Mr. H showed Mr. K saying to me, "We got here just in time, you sick fuck. We know what you're about to do to her," as Mr. K loosened and tightened the handcuffs. January 2019 and onward will tell more about this. The female witnessing all this and their threats to her scared her. She changes her story to not her being the victim, but she heard rumors it was someone else. The next day, I was arrested, charged with alleged obstruction and assaulting a police officer, nothing else. I went to the hospital for my injuries, which left me partly disabled for life. It took doctors 6 months to get any images due to swelling. When I was released from the hospital, I visited the female at the hospital she was at.
June 2013.
The 2 officers pressure her. She filed a restraining order against me after she said she would testify on my behalf. She also filed a complaint against the police after she was released from a different hospital. August 2013. The sex crimes unit clear me of all and any allegations. November 2013. Trial begins with Mr. K's testimony with first lawyer. Mr. K complicates the trial with false narrative about the female to justify the charges and discredit me. Mr. K admits to coming to the location 45 minutes prior to the official reports. The prosecutor realizes he is lying and the trial is adjourned. I refused the first plea deal. The transcript is missing the entire redirect, which incriminates Mr. K and Mr. H. The prosecutor has 2 more adjournments. February 2015. Trial resumes with second lawyer. Mr. H testifies, Mr. K testifies again. Now they allege they thought prostitution. They testify, I was not verbally abusive, not aggressive, not fighting them, I was cooperative. They had no injuries. The alleged bylaw stop was a pretext, with the first officer admitting to making mistakes, they almost shot me dead, and them having memory issues, etc. I refused another plea deal, and originally refused to accept a Section 11B charter argument to be tried within 18 months. Sometime after, Mr. K is no longer an officer and is a salesperson now. May 2015. I filed my lawsuit a few days before the limitation period expired, which was a few weeks prior to my testifying the first time. The lawyer for the city regarding the lawsuit threatens my second lawyer. The lawsuit is stayed until after the criminal proceedings are done. It was around this time in 2015 I spent towards $100,000 on fighting for truth and justice. December 2015, I take over my trial despite my post-traumatic stress and depression issues, and use all legal means to hold my second lawyer accountable successfully. I learned the prosecutor and the second lawyer made a deal not to give my independent evidence about the female. I introduced my evidence that was being withheld. Issue surrounding the female is no longer an issue, with the second voir dire. Professionally, in my 50 years, I worked in corrections, but not as a CO, more in the psychology department, while having another government position and businesses simultaneously, while being a fitness and martial arts instructor, focusing on bodybuilding and freestyle fighting, to having a great career in law as agent, with a placement in offers prosecuting, and revolutionizing the debt recovery world using litigation, all the while having the status of a peace officer when process serving and supply teaching public schools when I had time, to working in the mental health industry and former published author, to what I had been dealing with for the past 7 years, dealing with whistleblowing about police, judicial, political corruption, which all began by the false accusation by the female, and I tried to keep myself out of prison, fighting for truth and justice, not just for myself, but everyone. April 2016. I give closing summations only using the officer's testimonies to make my case. July 2016. I am convicted of both charges, based on allegedly disrespecting an officer. The prosecutor now seeks jail for the first time. I immediately file my Queen's Bench appeal materials, which includes the Section 11B charter argument. As a side note, police are not government employees, they subcontract. The illusion of RFPs are put out and contracts are clear. If and when police are at fault, the contracting governing body, example a city, insurance will not cover them. Other whistleblowers have shown at least 50% of people convicted of any type of crimes are innocent, and this is why police get away with so much. It is political interference. November 2016. I argue with the criminal trial judge the Section 11B trial argument. The prosecutor agrees the trial exceeded the time of 18 months. Trial judge dismisses both of us, thus dismissed. December 2016. I am sentenced to jail. I decline to make any arguments for leniency. Judge threatens me with 2 years less a day if I don't apologize. I refuse to apologize, knowing if I don't, I go to jail. I ended up serving weekends. The trial judge published my conviction as case law, and I found law students writing papers on this saying I should have been put away for life. A former friend of the judge told me the judge had next to no criminal law experience prior to becoming a judge, and he sat on a committee as a lawyer and has ties to the local police. June 2017. I had returned to my province of origin February 2017, thinking my appeal would be successful. A new judge for the appeal takes over at the last minute, and the prior seized judge was on my side. This is why I had to wait many months for his next available date. Excessive time is mentioned by this new Queen's Bench appeal judge, but not ruled on. The Queen's Bench appeal dismissed with third lawyer. Third lawyer took herself off record, said she wants nothing to do with the case. I returned to the city across country and filed my materials with the Court of Appeal. Again, included the Section 11B charter argument. February 2018. Internal Affairs conclude their investigation. New evidence is given supporting my position of innocence of all accusations and convictions. August 2018. Court of Appeal dismissed granting leave with the fourth lawyer, and he took himself off record not wanting anything to do with my case. There was no opportunity to bring up how he and the prosecutor found evidence that the trial transcripts were tampered with, or the Section 11B charter argument, etc. Both the third and fourth lawyer did not include the Section 11B charter argument in their verbal argument, despite it being in both my filed materials. Technically, this is still before the courts, but not ruled on. The fourth lawyer stated, "If I didn't do what I did with the female, there would have been no help for me." I decided not to pursue the Supreme Court of Canada and reopened the civil proceedings. January 2019. The Supreme Court sends me a letter, and I attempt to pursue my case with the Supreme Court of Canada. The lawyer for the city and the police pressures me to release information about the Supreme Court appeal. I refuse, and he threatens me with contempt. On a side note, the prosecutor, when addressing the Court of Appeal judge, said they would not be dealing with the matter if it goes to the Supreme Court of Canada. After many months, the only problem why the Supreme Court cannot hear my case is because there are no rulings in the lower appeal courts on the Section 11B charter argument, meaning I would have to bring it back to the courts in this city again. January 2019 onward. We began discovery of the lawsuit. The city's lawyer, and for the police, refuses Mr. K and Mr. H to answer most of my questions, and he himself gives answer to most of the other questions that were answered, while Mr. K and Mr. H are under oath. Both Mr. K and Mr. H denied finding the intestinal gas pills, which caused them to assume I was going to drug the female. The discrepancies with their denials are as such. They told her that evening I was going to drug her with the pills they found. And this is supported by audio recordings after the May 4th, 2013 event. The police filed affidavits stating the police had lawful obligation to warn her of the pills. Yet they still deny they found the intestinal gas pills, which caused them to tighten the handcuffs as they do with actual pedophiles and sex offenders, and beat me, causing my permanent injuries. Which is supported by the police profiling me by 9 a.m. the next morning as someone who mimics a pedophile grooming a child to obtain warrants. Keep in mind, no underage people were involved. And this is supported by the female telling me she fell in the shower because she alleged she felt dizzy after I had dropped her off once, after meeting with her to audio record, which I documented via audio recordings and an online journal at the time, which could explain why they took the text messages out of context, them telling me they want to find something sexual to charge me with, them saying, "What kind of sick fuck gets investigated for such things," etc., which is supported by her telling me she was sorry for what happened as everything was her fault, which is supported by her changing her story from her being the alleged victims to rumors of it being someone else, which is supported by her telling me The second executive director told her he needs to clean up her mess. The city's lawyer and the former officers were being disrespectful to me, such as name-calling, to the point I had to stop questioning during discovery. The disrespect of Mr. H was noted by my second lawyer when speaking to the criminal trial judge as well. This is in the trial transcripts. My second lawyer stated Mr. K was on the defensive and not answering simple questions directly. And this is also in the trial transcripts. Again, transcripts were tampered with. I have 4 versions. Disclosure packages have 4 versions. Threats to my second lawyer, not denied. Lawsuit being mentioned at the criminal trial. The ignoring of my Section 11B charter argument. Being convicted despite the evidence to the contrary, etc. The spring of 2019, I took down most of my videos and closed my Facebook account to avoid going back to jail, as I shared evidence of the injustice and corruption with my case. Yet the false narratives about me and my case have been made public by them. October 2019, most of my lawsuit was struck. Much of it was based on my being convicted. The rest was based on it allegedly being vague, which was not brought up before. This left only one element to my lawsuit. Costs were awarded against me to be paid forthwith, meaning if I did not pay, I could be held in contempt, which carries up to 40 days in jail each time until it is fully paid. I had an emotional breakdown in court. By the next day, I offered to withdraw my lawsuit. I sought help from pro bono lawyers. After 2 months, they told me they couldn't help me due to, quote, pushback. December 24, 2019, the judge signs the consent order that my lawsuit is withdrawn and I don't have to pay the balance of the costs. It's all over. January 2020. I made my videos public again and opened a new Facebook account. I am preparing to leave the city, province, and drive across country. Nowhere to go, not being able to afford to get there, and no way to support myself until I can figure out how to rebuild my life. I cannot obtain employment reflecting my education or career history, or most any other employment, due to having a criminal record now. I am left partly disabled from the May 4th, 2013 event, with other physical health problems from stress, suffering with post-traumatic stress and now depression. I have been living off the kindness of others, perhaps far too long. It appears it's time to meet my fate.